Welcome back. I have Dustin with me who can edit stuff now. So now with the Pick Six podcast, I can make as many errors as I want, and Dustin will clean it up. And you'll have to clean it up because honestly, let's be real. He's going to want to make sure I don't say anything silly or stupid on this episode. So
it usually takes me hours to get through the editing on these episodes. We have a 2-hour. These are all 2-hour episodes that I chopped down to 30 minutes.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
Okay, all right, yeah. No,
people are watching. Well, hopefully you know that we're not on for 2 hours, Dennis. But the people that are watching are like,
no,
what?
No, last time I had to hold the phone on my steering wheel of the truck. I would not have done that for 2 hours. Hey, welcome back. We're squeezing this in before the weekend. Some things to talk about. How's your week been, man? It's been a busy week in the sports card industry. How have you been feeling? How's things been going for you?
Slamming this week. I feel like every week, I mean, just all the way around was really busy. We had between like kids sports. I told a story about my son. I'll recap it really fast.
Yeah. Do it.
Had never won a team sport game ever. His first year playing team sports. He ran track. With his sister. So he's done sports, but this was the first year where we did flag football. I coached last season. We didn't win a game. He said it was because I did not build out an advanced playbook. I said I contend that I didn't have the personnel to execute the plays, but that's besides the point. This is a 9 and 10-year-old league for anyone.
Right. I know that.
So this year I don't coach. I'm just like, you know what? Let's just see how he does. They don't win any regular season games. They're really close. There's a couple games that were close, and we're in Mexico. And I thought the season was over. We get an email like, "Hey, we got a playoff game, coming up next week. It's one and done, single elimination playoff games." We're like, okay, well that's cool. We'll get to play one more game, and so we go, and it's 25-0 at halftime. 25-0. So we're like, my wife and I are like, man, I just hope he's got a good attitude, after the game. He's not like losing it. And I mean, but to be honest, when I was 9-10 and I lost in youth sports, I was crying and losing my mind. So it's not necessarily just an autistic thing with him being autistic, but
yeah.
So anyway, 25-0 at half. And they just come roaring back in the second half. It was unbelievable. It's like everything was working. The plays were working. We were getting stops on defense. It was wild. He was batting balls down, making stops. He did score the third touchdown on the comeback. So it's 25-20, and there's 42 seconds left, and they don't stop the clock. Once the drive starts, then there's no timeouts. You run out of bounds. The clock runs. And so on that first play, we have to go kind of the full length of the field. We throw a bomb, and our kid catches it. And it looked like he was going to score. Well, their kids just ran him down and pulled his flag at about the 10-yard line. So there's 12 seconds on the clock now. And so all the kids are running down. We're all like, run a play, just get down there and run a play. And so they got one last play, and they throw a touchdown as time expires at the buzzer.
Wow.
So it's 26-25. And I have a video. Well, I put on IG and stuff. I mean, it was just bonkers. We were just absolutely losing it. So it was funny. He's never won a game, and then he wins in like the most dramatic fashion ever. It was unbelievable.
Well, it's a core memory now. He's gonna remember that forever.
Like I said, hey, look, if you never win a game again, we will always have that night, and we got we've got video of the celebration, everything. So yeah, it was great.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. You sent me some stuff. That's pretty rad. It's cool when you have those experiences and it's your kid, how fun is that when it's your own child that's going through it and enjoying that? Yeah. Really cool. I don't have anything like that. We just have, softball practices for my daughter and trick-or-treating last night, but that's about it.
I find myself eating all the candy. Now I have to intermittent fast, before we get to Thanksgiving. Like all the candy's like still on my cheeks. I've got to fast to get rid of it.
I know, right? It's always tough.
I had a Snickers before we came on.
I had a couple myself. What's funny is you get people that normally when you set up for Thanksgiving, or not Thanksgiving, for Halloween, you buy way more candy than you need. So you have all this extra candy after the fact because hardly anybody actually comes, but you're stocked up for like 14 neighborhoods to show up at your house, but they don't. And then you have all this candy left over that, somehow dad's got to eat because, dad's got to eat it. Right. And so we're sitting here like eating all these random, Snickers and Kit Kats, little, you always think, oh, it's a little teeny Kit Kat. It'll be okay. I can have a couple of those. It's no big deal. They sneak up on you though. You have quite a few more than you think you're going to have.
After you have 100 of them, then it's like, okay.
Then you're just like, yeah, I think I just had, I ate my weight in calories for Kit Kat. But yeah, so the sports card stuff, since that's what we talk about here, I had an interesting thought earlier this week, and I was curious. I wanted to bring it up on our show and talk about it, and I thought maybe people would have something to say. Maybe they wouldn't. I also thought, well, maybe if people are going to think I'm snobby and stuck up and privileged and all that good stuff, and go, well,
suspense is building.
The topic du jour for me this week is buying cards at a certain level. And because when we all started, I remember when I first got back into buying back into cards, I remember I picked up my first expensive card. It was a big stretch, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a lot. Should I really do it? And this was like in January of 2020, or it might even been December 2019. And I was like, man, I don't know. I remember I won like a Jose Canseco 86 tops traded Tiffany PSA 10 for like $80. And I was like, oh, that's a lot. And then I sprung and bought a 1987 Leaf Greg Maddux PSA 10 for $180. And I was like, I don't know how this doesn't make sense. I don't know why I just did this. I feel like this is a dangerous road. There's a lot of money. It was hard. I was having a hard time with it. And now I'm to the point now where you're looking at cards, you're consolidating, you're selling to buy cards that are, way more than that, $5,000 to $10,000 to $15,000. It's like, and you're not spending the cash, so to speak, because you have all these cards you built up, you colored up enough, you've bought, sold, to the point where you're selling cards now to pay for these things, right? So the money is kind of like monopoly money in a sense, because you're just using the cash. That's the value of the card. You're selling it, taking it, applying it to buy the card. So it doesn't feel like you're spending that money, because you're not just going, I'm going to save up and take that. Because if you just decided to save up the money and put it aside to buy that card, I would save up that money and go, I need this for 5,000 other things. I don't want to do that. I'm going to go do this with that money. I'm going to go this trip. We're going to do this. Not that we don't have the money to go do those things either. You're not spending money. You don't have to do that. But when you save it up, it's like you just feel like it needs to go somewhere else, at least for me. And so it's easier to spend card money, so to speak, card capital, and use that money to buy those cards that are more expensive. And so you graduate to this level. So now the problem is I don't get as excited buying a card that's less valuable, that doesn't cost as much. And you almost ignore all that stuff because you're just like, well, it's not very valuable. It's not that much money. And it's way more feasible. It makes more sense. You could probably have way more of them, but I'd almost rather have less, more valuable cards because it's really cool. You feel like, you've got something that's very valuable, very rare, and it fits into the PC. You start like whittling down what makes the card PC for you. What are the things you look for now that you didn't look for before, but you've kind of learned as you've gone through the journey to, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. And of course, you keep buying things that are like, okay, and then you sell them to buy something else. Like we were talking before the show, something comes up and you didn't realize it was going to come up or didn't anticipate it coming up. And you bought all these other cards in the near term. Now you have to sell all those cards to buy that card. So it's like this cycle I feel like a lot of us go through. Again, there might be some people out there, I never do that. I just buy 89 Topps sets for $10 and I have fun. I eat the gum too. I don't do any of the things you're doing, Mr. Sender. I know you guys are out there too, but like you guys just be quiet for a second because a lot of us don't do that and we have fun playing this little game. I find myself not enjoying the cards that are less expensive. And I feel like there's something wrong with that. I don't like it. It like the joy was sucked out of it. Now it's like I just enjoy these cards that are more expensive and I have to stretch to get them or I have to sell cards to get them. Why can't I just enjoy the cards that are less expensive? How do I get myself back there? Do I need to get hypnotized? Do I need to take some kind of a medicine? What do I need to do to enjoy those cards that are less expensive again, Dustin? That was the conundrum. That's the question. Do you struggle with that too? Do you think other people struggle with that?
Yeah, well, I think it's an ongoing struggle of trying to figure out how do you want your collection to be made up? Are you coloring up? Are you coloring down? I'll pull out a card. Actually, it's one of my favorite Breeze cards. It's not the most expensive one, but it's one of these Vertex cornerstones. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen these before.
I have. Yeah.
I got this on eBay, like $300 or something, and it's game used. I like how it's kind of like the 4 little patches and they're all different. And then you've got the on-card auto. And I was just like, it's in a mag. I don't even need to grade it, throw it in a SlabMag or whatever. But like for $300, I enjoy looking at that card more so than some of the more expensive ones. So I think aesthetics probably play a role in the, what gets you excited about like a lower, cost card versus a higher cost one. I do think that there's kind of an achievement factor to getting that higher cost card of, man, not everybody has these. You don't see these every day. And that like kind of like that joy of ownership. The problem we have in today's hobby from my vantage point, and I have a variety of different interests, sports and non-sports cards. So that's really the problem is that, man, to me, it feels like there's so many important cards. Like, when we say like important cards, depending on how many players you collect, look, if you collect one player, then it's easier for you. Probably you can you got the hierarchy as some of these guys have with different tiers and they can kind of pick and choose. But for me, I collect a few different players. I've got non-sport stuff that I like. I like the fact I've actually gone more into like non-sport grails just because they, for the money, it's like a drop in the bucket on the sports card side for, like a couple of the non-sport stuff that I have, to where these are like very important hobby cards, non-sport hobby cards. They're not inexpensive, but there's like Justin Herbert RPAs that are twice as much, 3 times as much, whatever. So it's all relative. So I've actually really enjoyed kind of, I've got the Star Jordan, which is my biggest sports card, but I mean, just trying to prioritize all of that stuff is very, very difficult. And I do think that first off, another thing is tastes change over time. I've been back in the hobby for 6 years. In 6 years' time, I might have completely different taste where I'm like, oh, maybe I've got only Babe Ruth cards at that point. Who knows? Like, I don't know what it's going to look like. I think it'll be the same, but, kind of like what you talked about silver prisms last week. And I spent $700-800 this week on silver prisms from 2012. I was influenced by DPZ, but I agree though. I love the style. I love the silver prism. I agree with the take of, that's an all-time set, and I'm focused on football, basketball. I know baseball is unlicensed, but I was looking at a Ken Griffey Jr. PSA 10 that was like it's like $4.99 on eBay. And I was thinking like, that might be an underrated card, for like all these Griffey collectors. I know it's unlicensed and whatever, but
it's not a real popular one. But it's a cool card, but it's not a super popular one.
But that's probably the time to get it, because it's like, it's not popular today. And then in a year, it might be like, oh my God, you don't have one of these? You don't have one of these? Yeah.
It's a different dance, right? I mean, and I think with the way you're doing it, it's actually really, you're doing it right? And you have the right mindset. It's like, so it's almost like I need to find out a way to get back to where you're at. That's kind of like I think it's like, okay, we're getting close to the end of the year. Okay. 2024 is about to wrap and we start thinking, okay, we're all trying to become better. And we have the New Year's resolutions. What's your new hobby? What's your your hobby New Year resolution? How do you want to collect differently in 2025 than you did in 2024? Every year I always say I need to buy less cards. They need to be more meaningful. And I need to stop, just like maybe be more selective and thoughtful in what I buy. Again, I think it's going to be my resolution. I know we're a little bit of ways from that, 2 months away, but it's something I've been thinking about going, okay, I have enough to pray over. I'm lucky to have what I have. And for those of you who follow me on IG, if you don't already, you can follow me on it. You can see what I have. I've posted everything I have. The only thing I haven't posted that I have currently is the 98 now. 98 is a 98. It's the 1990s showing. It's going to show up here in a minute. I've got the David Robinson, the popular set. It's the 98 as well, which is always confusing, but I have 98 Skybox EX Century Essential Credentials Future. This one's like at a 53, I believe. I got a PSA 6. I bought it raw. That was a bummer. But I've got that, and I have the now of the same set, and it graded a 7, which is a little better. I bought them both raw. Kind of a bummer, but they're still cool cards to have. Didn't spend too much on them. From a really cool collector in Australia that collects D-Rob, and I bought a few cards from him in the past. Great guy. Anyway, but you can see what I own. So I have an 87 Fleer PSA 10 Jordan. That's the only thing I don't have. It's sitting in a vault. And I have it there just because I'm like, okay, if I need to sell something, I'll probably sell that, and I'll move that over to sell in Fanatics if I have to. But I should just pause and be happy. But this is another segue. I'm going to segue into this next question. You can answer this too. Which brings up this topic of cards that show up that you don't anticipate showing up, but you've bought all those. You bought all those prisms now, Dustin, and now all of a sudden, the card you've been coveting for the past like 8, 9, 10 months that you never thought you'd see is at auction. What do you do? And now you've tapped yourself because you bought all these prisms, silver prisms. What goes through your brain when that happens?
It's time to talk to my wife about spending some like real cash on the like not spending channel money on it, and actually like spending some of the regular money on it. Well, and here's my problem too, is I'm out of the cards that I'm okay selling, because I did kind of like where I looked at everything that I had. I did have quite a bit of volume on stuff, and I was like, you know what, I want to get into some larger items, and I had a pretty good amount of inventory. Just like, all right, I'm moving off of this stuff. I'm sending it all off to DC Sports 87. Shout out, #ad. And then like sell it, sold it off, and then that's how I was able to pay for a lot of the larger stuff. Well, I'm out of all that now, so now it's kind of like, yeah, if I have to sell something, it hurts.
Tough decision time. Tough decision time.
Like, damn, that sucks. Well, I shouldn't say all of it. I do have some things where it would be fine, but not like sizable. It's not like I've got like $5,000 of stuff where like I could just like let that go and it's fine. Right. So that's where I've scaled back quite a bit on impulse buys until we met up last week and you brought me back in. You sucked me right back in like a tractor beam. No, but I enjoy those cards, and I was thinking like, man, I want to have some in like 9s and 10s, and that'll be kind of like the set, because I don't set collect. Like I don't have anything particular that like I'm like, I've got a lot of a particular set. So I decided after our talk, you sold me. And I already have some of those cards, but I wanted to have some more. So I did it. Yeah. I don't have a good answer for it other than, looking around, what can I get out of it? Depends on the card too. It depends on what we're talking about. I think there's levels of what have you been waiting on stuff. Like, did you think this was going to, come? Is it something that you really badly want? And, you've been looking for it for a couple of years, and now okay. Now here's the other part that's a struggle. It's sitting on auction. They throw it up at 99 cents, and maybe it's a $5,000 card, and they're running it. That's 7 days or whatever.
That's right.
And it's like, damn, that could sell for 2,000. It could sell for 6, but like you want to be in there somewhere. And, a lot of times, a lot of times this happens to me where I do bid and I might extend myself a little bit, but I also am not going to like, if I was thinking, oh, okay, I'm going to, it's a $5,000 card, I'm going to try to get, if I'm low on funds, I'm trying to get it at 3. I'm trying to get a deal. Like I'm trying to be the one that got lucky and just like caught the auction just right. It rarely ever happens like that though. It usually is like, it's a $5,000 card. I'm in at 2,800 and it sells for 6 or something. And I wasn't even close. But then after that too, I think what happens is I'm like, okay, well, I didn't get that copy. It's okay. It's not the end of the world. That's a lot of stuff. Now, there are certain things, though. I'll use an example of, I'm just going to use an example of a Stranger Things card. This is Dustin in Stranger Things. This is the blue numbered out of 10, the on-card auto. It's a redemption. So it was like, I started buying these cards in, what was the national leading up to Atlantic City National? Was that 2022? Yeah.
2022. Yeah.
So I'm 2.5 years into buying Stranger Things cards. This is the only copy I've ever seen of this numbered out of 10 in 2.5 years. And part of it is because you don't have breakers opening it. Nobody cares. Like there's a bunch of unopened boxes. Like it's not something that's not Topps Chrome baseball where everyone's got to rip it, or basketball cards. And this was sitting on eBay for $3,000 forever. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not spending $3,000 on it. And then it was on my watch list. And then one day it was at $900 OBO. And I offered $600 and I got it for $600. But, and still, like I bought this maybe 6 months ago. I've never seen another one. So like, that's kind of an example. And that's just like, that's a random non-sport card, but maybe for, sports card collector, it might be something that you've been looking for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. and it pops up and you're like, you know what? I'm going in on this, like I'm going in on it. So there's different levels to it. I think there's something that like, maybe you see it sell every 3 months, every 6 months. And then there's something where you're like, holy hell, like this thing never pops up.
Yeah, because I look at like the cards, and I agree with you. Sometimes you got to jump at some of these cards that don't sell very often or haven't sold in a long time. But what you bring up a very interesting point on how we can take it in two different directions. So first direction is, how often will this card come to auction or become available? If it's not very often or very rarely, then you do have to be ready to jump on it, right? The other side of the equation is, if you have cards you need to sell now to buy said card, it's harder to sell some of the stuff that's less expensive because you have to batch it all together and hope you get the money, and it's less predictable, right? Yeah. I look at the cards I have in my collection right now. I have like about 14. I'm looking at it right now, my alt, because it's showing me. So, 93 finest refractor PSA 10 Griffey, that doesn't sell very often, and there's not as many of them. There's, it's not a rare card, but people don't sell it very often. Bowman's Best in 98 Atomic PSA 10 out of 100. It's like the NBA black label. That's sold once in 3 or 4 years. I don't know when I'm going to see that. The super jersey patch Kobe Bryant out of 25, that just sold on Card Hobby, which is a weird site that people have been talking about. I didn't really realized it. It's like a Chinese site or something like that. It doesn't load very well on my. Yeah, it doesn't load on my computer very well. It's probably a good thing. Somebody's helping me out with that. But there was a BGS 8 that sold last week or a couple weeks ago, but that's the first I've seen it sold. It doesn't sell very often. It sells like maybe once a year, maybe once every 2 years. So I won't get that back if I sold it. The Floral Brilliance Barry Bonds PSA 8 out of 24, the 24 karat, that sold a couple times in the last few years, and I bought this one privately. The Mystique.
So, question for you then. So if you have like 15 to 20 cards that are kind of like, that's where you live in, is like, man, and then you've got like some of the lower end stuff too that you like to play around with, like set collecting. But do you get enjoyment out of, let's say you owned like one of these cards you're talking about for a year or two, and then you're basically kind of rotating that card out for another one that is similar. Like, do you get enjoyment? Do you get enjoyment out of that? Or do you feel like, man, I'm just like swimming in a circle and I wish I could have all of them? Or is it just like a rotating kind of display that you enjoy?
Your second point. I want to own all of them. I have a hard time letting go of some of them. I have to go, and I go back and I get them again. Sometimes I buy them back. I've had it before, and I go and I buy it back. With these particular cards, most of them the values are too high for it. I don't know. I'd have to keep selling better cards in my PC, and there's not very many of them, to go buy them back. And they don't sell very often. So I feel like if I were to sell one, I might not see it again for a while. Now, if it sells for a massive amount, then everybody else is going to bring theirs out. But some of these are like, there's only 9 of them. There's only 4 PSA 10s in one card. There's only 2 of this one. There's only 1 of that one. There's only 14 of this. There's some of them that have, 20 to 30 PSA 10s, and then they will sell. But a handful of my cards, if I were to sell them, I don't think I get them back. I just don't. And so that's the conundrum. Then you're like, well, if I got to sell something that's worth a lot of money, I'm probably not getting it back. There's like 3 or 4 cards I know I'll never get back. They're just so rare. And those are cool to have, and I'm glad I own them, and they're valuable. But they're kind of like the untouchables. Like, those are the last ones to go if I have to liquidate, right? But when you talk about set collecting, the trouble with set collecting, and this is I don't know, not everybody enjoys doing it, but with set collecting, what's interesting, and people see this on the eye-catching sales from Card Ladder, and they'll, oh my gosh, why did a PSA 10 of like Michael Cage from 87 Fleer go for so much? It doesn't make any sense. Michael Cage. Well, obviously it's set collector, right? Someone's grabbing that card, and I know what it's like because I'm about 80% done now. I have about 5 or 6 that are coming in the mail. I spent like $20 a piece on, right? And these are the PSA 9s of the cards. I got all my stickers back, reholdered. They look great. Everything's looking good. I'm about 80% there. But there's about 10 cards in that PSA 9 set that I'm still haven't gotten yet that are like $700 or $800 a piece. Yeah. And most of them are random. Ben Hubbard, I think, is one of them. Who is that guy? Like, so I have to spend that kind of money on that card. So the way I collect, some people go and they get the big ones first, they get them out of the way. Obviously, I have the PSA 10 Jordan. I don't have a PSA 9, so it's a full set with the best card and its highest grade. But I have a hard time spending, but I can't not complete the set. So I'm the kind of collector where it's like I can't just leave it hanging there. I gotta complete it. Even if I completed it and sold it, I've got to complete it. I can't let it just be incomplete. So that's almost like a disease, in my opinion. It's like, my gosh.
Like a curse. Yeah.
It's like a curse. Like I got to complete it, but I don't really want to spend this kind of money on that guy, but I'm going to have to complete the flipping set because some of these cards, are not as, and I bought a raw set from my hobby store or hobby shop, and I think I bought it for like $300. It was all raw. I sent a handful in and I thought looked good. They all came back PSA 6. So you want to talk about great. PSA is a very harsh grader. I don't know how people get PSA 9s and 10s. I don't know how, and modern cards, I guess, but holy cow, if it's anything from the 80s or these condition sensitive cards like these David Robinson essential credentials, the year after the first essential credentials is the best way to explain it for basketball. I did the graders notes and they tell you, and it's like, crap, I didn't see that. I was under a loop looking at it. I'm like, I didn't see the peeling here or there. So it's difficult to get a good grade. So that's the problem with set collecting is you're going to have to complete the set. You're going to have to spend the money on these cards you just don't want to spend money on because they're players that don't matter, but they matter for the set. But yeah, I think when you shrink down enough, it's hard to sell cards to get the cards you want. You kind of have to make a decision like, how badly do I want said card that's at auction now that's rare? Do I want it? Do I want it bad enough where I'm going to have to sell some of these cards? Because I can't just, I'm going to go take X amount of thousands of dollars and just go buy it and go, I'm going to have it too. I can't do that. I'm not made of money like that. So I have to make those decisions and it's painful, but you have to do it. But I just feel like we're just constantly in that cycle, right? Because cards keep popping up and you keep getting excited about them and you want to complete the set or you want to complete this, add this card to the PC because boy, would it be cool to have this one to match with this one. Oh, this guy, he's really lonely all by himself. He wants his now counterpart to the future. And I got to put them together because they're lonely and they want to be together and stupid crap like that. I say to myself, and then there you are. So thankfully, David Robbins is not too expensive.
Yeah. And even with PCing a few players, you can also make a decision of like, okay, do I need 80 slabs of Breeze cards? Like, do I need 80 of them? I mean, I could also just pick like the top 10 that I like and then just sell the other ones off, and then I could buy other things. That's an option. But I also just really enjoy what I've got. Like the volume I've got of him has been like, like I enjoy the sets and I enjoy the cards that I picked. It wasn't just like random, type Breeze cards or I would sell them. So that's always the rub. Is just
and there's always this part of you goes, man, if I just sent all these suckers in and auctioned them off, boy, I'd have a big cash windfall. That'd be pretty cool to have, right? What can you do with that? And but then you'd be sad in your heart because you don't have these great cards you love and you love the hobby and we love talking about it. And I'd come on this show sad going, I don't have any cards anymore. I sold them all. And I would be a sad Dennis and you wouldn't want me on the show anymore. And then it would be sad. But I think something else that's kind of interesting too, when you talk about consolidation, buying, selling, the whole nine, is how long does it take for you to get your card? Okay. Or get your money for your card you sell? Because everybody goes, I'm going to put it up for sale. I'm going to put OBO for this price. Well, it's going to take you probably 6 months to sell that card unless you are really aggressive with your price. And most of us won't be. You're going to have to auction it off. I've been auctioning cards off for the past couple years. I don't think I've sold anything best offer in a long time. And I just send everything through, Nick at Wharf Sports. That's my shout out to him. And, he doesn't give me any special deals on anything, but nobody really does. I kind of feel like I just pay. But anyway, I do this for free and I pay the full price for everything. No, I get, he does a really good job. He does a good job putting stuff out there, but it takes a while to get paid. And this is not Nick's fault. I think it's just with all auctions. It's just in Probstein, same thing. I sold some cards a month ago. I still haven't gotten the money. They just take a while, right? And so it's just the PWCC, Fanatics Collect gives you quite a bit of a leeway to pay for things. I think the same thing for Probstein. They give you some time to pay for things. So then you're just not getting that cash. So it could take a while. You can go, hey, I need to jump on this auction. It ends in 2 weeks or a week. but I'm going to send my cards in and I'm not going to get anything for 30 days. So then you're just sitting there with, however you want to pay for it ahead of time. It gets tricky. So I think a lot of us are doing that dance. Not everybody's as honest about how they're doing it. Maybe some people don't want people knowing how they're doing it, but I think it is happening. Obviously, we're all doing it because we want to get some of these cards. We're all attracted to them. We all love them. So
yeah. No, it is a struggle, but it always kind of in your mind, it's forever prioritizing. How badly do I want this, and how badly do I want to collect that player, and how badly do I want, this, that, or the other thing. At least with an auction, you have some time, if it's running at 5 days or 7 days or 10 or whatever, you can really think about like, all right, how much do I really want to spend? Do I actually want this? Like, you can sleep on it, before you make a decision. I guess that's good. But it's kind of like there's so many options now. There's so many auction houses. There's so many great cards always coming through. So
speaking of like buying cards before, when the card comes up that you want, you're like, oh gosh, I wish I wouldn't have bought all those cards. Do you ever like lose an auction on a card you really wanted and maybe you just lose it by just a little bit? It's almost like the less you lose it by, the more angry you get and frustrated because you could have won it for that few dollars more. Yes. Do you just run out and buy something else because you're mad? you have like that what's the, I don't know, what would you call the word, the regret, there's got to be a word for it.
Yeah. The retail anger or something like that.
Something like that. And you go buy something else that you've been eyeballing. You're like, forget, I'm going to get this anyway.
I've done it before for sure. Yeah. I mean, because there's always something to buy. It's tough. I've struggled with it in the past. I've talked about it where it's just gotten kind of out of control, but fortunately, you can sell them back, and you might not get, all of your money back, but you'll get a lot of it back usually.
How much money would we both have right now, Dustin, if we didn't start buying cards again back a few years ago? And
if we had just done NVIDIA stock instead of cards,
if we just would have not bought any cards and kept all that.
Yeah, but we wouldn't have all the joys that come with
but we wouldn't have all the joys.
We wouldn't have all.
I also like having all that cash too.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding, everybody.
Actually, you said in the beginning, if it's something that's taken away, like if you bought cards and your family did not go on vacation, or something, like if it was if it was like that, then that would be a whole different ball game.
That's a different ball game. No.
If your family is taking a hit from it or whatever, then your wife's yelling at you because you can't afford to do other things, then fine. Like that's different. But we're kind of just playing around with this stuff.
No. It needs to. I've actually kept track. I've told everybody this multiple times. I've said this on these shows, for a couple of years now. I've kept down to the penny how much I've spent and how much I've bought, and I know how much I've actually in. Taxes included. What everything. Every dime I've paid, every dime I've gotten back and through sales, fees associated, all of that taken out. I know exactly where I stand, right? So I can see how my behavior has benefited me or not benefited me. I think I'm down like 5 or 6K right now overall for the last 6 years. 5 or 6K. That's about where I'm at with current prices on things. I've made some purchases that have helped go up. Some that are like, but they've all kind of, it's within, and that's just accounting for if I were to sell it, I had to sell it quick, and I'm taking about 10 to 15% off the top conservatively. And that's what I end up taking home. And that's what I'd be down 5 or 6 grand.
Yeah.
So it's like taking 5 or 6 grand to the casino and losing it or something else. So that's where I sit overall with everything. But that helps me kind of like
if you went fishing every weekend, or if you went golfing every weekend, you'd be out that 5 or 6 grand.
Correct. And I don't do some of those things because I do this, right? I don't do certain things myself because this is my hobby. I love it, enjoy it. And I go, okay, if I'm going to do this, I can't do that. And so, I don't, I've been wearing the same clothes for 6 years. I don't buy any. I don't get haircuts. I just kidding.
You've been slumming for the last 6 years so that we can own cards.
I need that Michael Jordan, so I will not eat for a month. Okay. Anyway, so that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. I know we're already at 34 minutes, man. We go pretty fast with these things. So that was the topic. And obviously everybody, we're kind of ranting a little bit. We're kind of just free flowing, and we're going in different directions here, but you can kind of see the common denominator, the topic of du jour that we're speaking to today. And it's buying habits, really. I mean, you kind of call it buying habits, and how it affects your mentality when it comes to buying cards. Obviously, this whole thing, is caveated with obviously be very, very fiscally responsible, make smart decisions, prioritize your family. You should be able to take care of all the things that normally come up and feed your family, go on vacations, do all the things you need to do. It should never affect that. And if it does, you should be able to sell. You just sell your cards as soon as that, if you ever had an issue, you sell your cards. This is what you do. I always kind of joke, like, I have them sitting there. It's like an extra savings account. If you need to just sell them, you sell them, right? So I think we all have those 3 or 4 cards. We really would love to grip a little harder than the others if it came to that. But ultimately, we just enjoy doing it, and it's a lot of fun. How do you do it out there? Are we a little bit crazy? Are we totally off the mark here? Or do other people do the same thing? I mean, I'd love to know people's strategy and how they go about buying cards. And if they have to save up to buy a card that's a bit more valuable, how do you go about doing that? Is there a process that goes on there? Do you find yourself less interested in the less expensive cards when you've bought a few of the more expensive cards? Or does that not change for you at all? Just curious about all that stuff.
Let us know in the comments, friends, and then we'll be back next week to talk about how we just bought more Silver Prism 2012 cards.
All right, everybody. Take care. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you all later.